Hi, book club members. I'm Jen.
And I'm Carrie.
And this is Warhammer 40k Book Club, where we read from a crag. Our episode is number 121, and our book is Lord of the Night by Simon Spurrier, a classic Night Lords story that tells the tale of Zosah chasing after the Corona Nox. We posted several questions on our website, WH40kbookclub.com, and we encourage participation in our conversations via YouTube, our site, or Encrypted Vox channel. Spoiler warning for a 20-year-old book, because Lord knows I hadn't read it yet. If you haven't yet read it, check it out, then come back to this episode, as we'll be discussing it from start to finish in great detail. And there are some twisty twists in it that I was not expecting.
Mm-hmm.
So do yourself a favor, huh? With that, let's dive in. As always, Carrie, did you like the book?
I did like the book. It was a lot of fun. My only complaint about it is that, he kind of passes out a lot. I was just like, that's weird.
He does. I just kind of wanted to dude, everything okay, fam?
And he'd pass out in public.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To which I was just like,
yes.
Maita, why didn't you kill him when he's passed out? What? What?
Don't you know to double tap? You could have ended a lot of suffering. I mean, I'm glad she didn't, because I really, and we'll talk about this more in a second, but I really did enjoy Zosah as a character. But yeah, he does pass out a lot. I had a few little niggling complaints about it, but overall, I really did enjoy this book, and I was a little bummed that it took me this long to read it. It's been on my to-read list for forever, and it just never got to read until now. So very excited that the Black Library not only reprinted it for a second or third time, but that they also, that we got the chance to read it, because the printing schedule has been a little grim.
It's not even the printing as much as it almost is the shipping.
You know what? At this point, yeah, that's a little truth bomb.
I mean, I just got my Renegades Thursday or Friday?
Yeah, because I got mine the day before yours. Yeah. Yes. So, these books better be good, because they came in on a horse and pony.
Right. The Pony Express is alive and
exactly.
well.
I was waiting to see the Pony Express show up and be like, well, howdy there, Jebediah.
And it probably came over by boat.
Right. But rowing boat.
Yes, with the Roman slaves, underneath there doing ramming speed and all that. That'd be hilarious.
Right. No Ursa claws on those. I could complain about this. I could probably, no joke, I could probably devote an entire episode just to complaining about the printing schedule, the lack of information on said printing schedule, and the shipping. But I'll spare all of you that. It would be a very impassioned soapbox. What parts stood out to you?
Oh, let's see. Man, I probably should have brought my glasses. This print is so tiny, and it's a tiny book.
Okay, can we talk really quickly? This is Bible print.
I mean, I'm holding this so far away from me. But so one of the things I did remember noting down was on page 242, where Sahal was, talking about, the differences, between Kurz and the other Primarchs, because I always I always love that stuff. But I think really what I liked the most about it, maybe it was on this page 365. Yes, it's when he's talking to Maita, in the psychic, basically the astral plane, if we've got any X-Men fans out there. When he's basically telling her that the Night Haunter was supposed to be this monster. He was created to be. And he did what he was supposed to do, what he was made for. And then he was shunned for it. And it's oh, that's such an interesting, I don't know. I mean, that's probably partially true. It's true from definitely their point of view, for sure. And it's something actually Kurz, talked about in, now I don't remember which Horse Heresy book it was, where he attacks Dorn. I don't remember which one it was. Or it might have been a short story. I don't even remember. They're blurring together. But when he nearly kills Dorn, and because he's telling Dorn, he's like, I'm supposed to be a monster, and you act like this is not how it's supposed to be. Like, and so, like when Sahal's telling her, like, we were sent to these planets where there was no hope for redemption. This is what we were supposed to do. And then because we did our job really well, but because it was disdainful to most people, they turned against us. And I always like those kind of interpretations. That was a very interesting interpretation of the Night Lords, and kind of, explaining, why they never turned to chaos. He's like, we didn't turn to chaos. We didn't have to. Our whole thing was terror. Just kind of turning everything that she knew from the Inquisition on its head for her, which, like his is true from a certain point of view. We do know how the Inquisition operates. It's just, they operate on propaganda as much as a propagandist. Let's be real. Like, they only let so much information out, and who knows what. And I would say not even half the Inquisition knows everything anyway. Probably less than half.
Right.
Probably like maybe even 10%, maybe.
As an aside, as meta commentary, I do wish that the Black Library would pick a lane on that. So, like we had, I actually always think about, and everybody knows that I love the Vault of Terra series, but there's that scene in the first book where Erasmus is down in the, like underneath the throne, and he's like, why are there like 20 Primarch looking guys? That's weird. Right. And then, so like, I feel like that's the one spectrum. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the Beckwin book where the guy's like, I mean, everyone knows there was 20 Primarchs originally, right? And everyone goes, obvs.
Even though they weren't Inquisition, they were just run-of-the-mill people.
They were just people. Yeah. So like, I feel like
everybody knows that.
Like, duh. I feel as though they need to pick a lane on that. Like either make it so that some people know, some people don't know, but at least make it sense. Like make it make sense. Who knows what? I'm sure there's an explanation for that. That all comes down to need to know basis and curiosity, something along those lines.
Seniority, things like that.
But similar to you, section. Apologies, I'm having connection issues tonight, so you totally froze there for a second.
That's okay. You did too a little bit ago.
Excellent. I love it. Yep. No idea why this is happening. So one of the other things that I really enjoyed was on page 243. Similar to you, it's when he's just, and this is just the turns of phrase that he uses. When he said that, when he's talking about Kurz, and he says he had never been human, but like all the Primarchs, there lurked in some deep corner of his luminous heart a flavor, a bitter taste of humanity. And he talks about how he sacrificed it. And the phrase that I really liked was that he wiped tears of insanity from snowy cheeks and cast his warmth to the wolves, and he did it in the Emperor's name. Absolutely love that phrasing. There's a couple of scenes in this book where he just like, man, he just knocks the phrasing out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
Another one I had highlighted was on page 305. When it's the line where it says, Mita Ashen had something of a crisis of faith. It's just absolute great phrasing. Love it. I feel bad that I never read this, that it took me so long to read this book, because we were reading the Warhammer 40k books back then. Like that was basically when we first got started into them. How did I miss this book, dude?
And she's not saying that she's saying her and her husband. Because it was not me back then.
Oh, yes. Sorry. My husband and I were starting to read these around then, and dang it. I feel so bad. So let me ask you this. Did you like Zosah Hall as a protagonist? Is he a good Night Lord? And what does a good Night Lord mean?
I don't know if they're...
Is he good at being a Night Lord, but he's not he's a bad person?
I mean, I guess what's good at being a Night Lord, I mean, he's very good at,
He's really good at that terror thing.
yeah, he's really really good at the terror thing. I really liked how he was able to twist everything around to kind of develop his little empire. And he kind of like reminded me of his father a little bit, where he'd hate them, but then realize he needed them, and then he realized he was protecting them. It's just, kind of a love-hate relationship, I guess, with what he had created, which to me just also led back to the fact that he didn't want to be alone, right? And he'd been alone for 10,000 years. He'd been,
Well, it goes
kind of
back.
exiled.
It goes, yeah, and it goes back to something that you and I have talked about with like almost all of these
Right.
Trader Marine books.
They're looking for that family, that brotherhood.
It is hardwired into them. And, they'll find it wherever they can get it, right? I did. He reminded me of the Grinch, because there's that scene when he first comes into when he first meets Gianni, and he just thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. Like, oh, yeah, see, your world is corrupt, and I've been sent here to root out the corruption. And she's all in disbelief, and she talks about how the lies just come spoiling out of him, right? And he's just like, oh, no, yeah, sorry. Looked into it. Definitely corruption. I'm going to need your help, in particular, to help find this corruption to prove that you're faithful. And man, I mean, she just eats it up because
Right.
these are the Emperor's angels, right? Which goes back to that whole ignorance thing of, I mean, I guess like their logo isn't anything you might not find on Loyalist,
I guess.
as you would call it, watered down subchapter.
Right. I mean, I guess, sure. I mean, I guess, I was like, well, skulls with bat wings. Well, I mean, there is that one that's the scorpions. So, and I don't think scorpions are that friendly, but okay. So there we go. Anyway, but Maita recognized him immediately. So that was the crazy thing. But she just like plucked out, and wow. Well, I guess I'm going to have to do this is fun. Her Discord, looks like her Discord might have crashed. So I guess I'm just going to have to put a little pause on this. We're having some technical difficulties, so stay tuned. And we're back. So sorry about that. We're having Discord issues tonight. This is just kind of what happens when we live in different states. We can't record in the same room. We just work with what we got. And we don't know whose end this is on. It could just be Discord. Like, I'm just going to blame Discord. Are you cool with that? Just blame Discord?
I'm good with it.
Cool.
I'm
All right.
good with it.
So, I don't remember where we were. I did not take a note. That's...
I don't remember where we were either, other than just talking about Zosah. Oh, I was talking about how he's kind of the Grinch and how very easily he lies. And I do like that. It's one of the things that I always really like about the Night Lords is I feel like, bear with me here on this one. There is, like, they always talk about how, oh, we stripped away our humanity and we did all that, like, blah, 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 we're monsters. And yet, they do understand how to manipulate people, right? Because to understand terror and how to utilize terror, you really do have to understand humanity. And there is this oddly messed up human part of them. So even though he's just like, oh yeah, like, especially when he's talking about Conrad, how they got rid of their humanity. It's like, because you're so effective, oddly, you might be some of the most human.
I mean, possibly. You could definitely make that argument.
So, okay, we see a couple of Night Lords in this book. Let's talk about this crown. Now, obviously, we have the benefit of this book came out in 2005. The Night Lords Omnibus comes out 10 years later, or the first book, Soul Hunter. Given what we read in Soul Hunter, what do you make of this obsession with the crown?
Well, there's a lot of obviously some things I was like, okay, ADB kind of told this a different way, like just about the assassin and how she, what she took and how she left and stuff. But the whole time, when he kept saying, he's like, he said that I would be the leader. It's like, I do remember clearly Conrad Kurz, like, he didn't care. He didn't care about any of them. He didn't care who was going to lead them onward. And, he might have told Zahal that just to fuck with them. And
no, that would be the Conrad Kurz I know and love. Like, part of me was like, he did not say that to you. We saw it in... Oh, wait, we only saw part of that conversation in Soul Hunter, didn't we?
I mean, he could have told him. He could have told Acerbus. He could have told other people. He could have, like when he told Soul Hunter, no, I don't care. They're all going to fight, but there's nobody's in air. Who knows which of these is true? They all could be true at the same time.
Well, because also you have to remember that Conrad Kurz was in the throes of literal insanity at that point. And, even Talos talks about how he had some good days and he had some bad days. And it's entirely possible that one moment he's like, yes, Zosah, you're my boy. You're my guy. And here's what it's going to be. And then it's entirely possible he's told Acerbus that. And it's also possible that he told Talos, like, he had a moment of clarity and was like, oh, I just don't give a shit. Like, that one, and this isn't just because I'm a huge ADB and Night Lords trilogy fangirl, that one feels more closer to the truth given how just nihilistic Conrad Kurz was. But he's also kind of manipulative, so I totally could see him saying that. I did.
Well, also, here's another thing. Because we talked about with that trilogy, well, we haven't finished trilogy, but we talked with those two books that he didn't care. He didn't give a shit about any of them. Maybe he did all this so they'd fight and kill one another. That's also very possible.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're 100% correct.
He didn't want the Legion to continue.
Right. It's entirely possible that that was his last little to his sons. Like,
right.
Oh, let's see how much, because, one of the things that he talked about he talks about in a lot of the Conrad Kurz books, especially the Primarch novel, he really does ruminate on the fact that towards the end there, he was just getting the murderers and the bad people, right? Mm-hmm. And so maybe that was his final parting gift of, okay, you children, you horrible, horrible thieves and murderers. Here you go. Go knock yourself out. See what happens.
Which honestly, I kind of find it even funnier that in this book, Zosah is ruling over disparate gangs. It all comes full circle.
It all comes full circle. It was actually kind of funny because, again, once he does get into that territory and he starts getting like these followers,
right?
I was like, oh, he found his people. And like when they called the one gang the Shadowkin, right? I was like, oh, he has found his people.
Right.
Like, these are people. And when you think about it, really living in an underhive, very, very akin to Nostromo Prime.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I bet these people don't really see sunlight.
These people probably don't even know sunlight is a thing. And he found his people, which kind of made me we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but it kind of gave me a warm fuzzy. Actually, you know what I forgot to mention about this, since we're talking about Soul Hunter? Didn't Simon Spurrier reach out to you or reach out to us on Twitter?
Yeah, he did. So, when we announced that, hey, we're reading this book, I'm going to pull up the tweet here because I don't want to misquote the guy, because that just would make everything worse. So, okay. He said, someone told me, this is Simon Spurrier, someone told me that there's a perception among 40k fans that I had a falling out with Black Library and was discourteous to the other writer of the Night Lords books, meaning ADB. He's like, if that's a rumor going around, it's totally untrue. So that is, and I told him
canon.
I personally hadn't heard that, but I would be sure to mention it on the podcast. And he was like, I was really, really appreciate it. So there. So
one of the things that I had read on Reddit like a few years ago, I think it was was somebody said exactly that. They said that the canon, was that ADB when he was writing, and more on that in a second, but when he said that he was writing the Night Lords trilogy, the first book, Soul Hunter, he reached out to Simon Spurrier and was like, hey, can I use your character? Can I use Zosah Hall? Which we've seen before, right? Uriel Ventress shows up in the Guy Haley Dark Imperium books. So little wink, wink, nod, nod thing there. And allegedly Simon Spurrier left him on red, was what I heard. There was another version of it that I think said that he was just like, nope, absolutely not, because he'd had this falling out. But it never jived, because I saw an interview with ADB where he talked about how he got into writing the Night Lords series. And he said that Black Library basically came to him and were like, did you ever read Lord of Night? And he was like, yes. And they were like, did you like it? And his quote was something along the lines of, well, just like anyone else with eyeballs, yes. So it never quite, I don't know how that got started. I don't know who never let the truth get in the way of a good
story.
supposition.
I mean, who knows, right?
I'm glad to hear it's not true.
I mean, if it could have just been like someone was like, why wasn't Zosah Hall, in these books, and ADB could have said something as benign as, well, he's not one of my characters, and then that could have started, this whole thing. I mean, so because we had a dealing with ADB, that makes it sound like something horrible, but where he's a very blunt guy. He's very, very blunt, and he's almost Dutch. He's so blunt, and he doesn't mean anything by it. And I had made a joke with the Warhammer 40k account, and he came back, someone retweeted it, and they said, look what these people are saying about you. And then he snipped back, and then he's like, and I was like, oh no, this is what we meant. And of course I'm like, oh my God, we pissed off ADB. And then he came back and was like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean it that way. And now that I'm re-seeing this and seeing it in whole, I see what you're saying, blah, blah, blah. I could totally see him have said something blunt like that, not knowing or not realizing how somebody was going to take it. Because that's the problem with Twitter too, right? Or these, any of these written social medias, is that we lose tone and, seeing someone's face and all of that. So it's hard to really see that. And I could totally see that because of how blunt he is, that someone just took and ran with that. And
right.
also, it also just takes us like, wow, did you see what ADB said? He seems really pissed. Well, maybe he was really pissed. And you know how these things start.
Oh my God, totally know how it is. I think also, and this isn't totally a spoiler, there's a conversation in the third book of the Night Lords trilogy where Octavia is mentioning that she talked with Mercutio. And she's like, yeah, Mercutio, I think it's Zosah Hall, that she's like, he talks about Zosah Hall. And Talos is like, yeah, that guy's dead. Like, bless his heart, then he thinks he's still alive, right? It's a very throwaway line, but it could be, I suppose, if you had already started going down this conspiracy theory, you might just be like, nah, screw that guy. He left me on red, so I'm gonna kill the character. Totally dismissive of it.
Crazy thing is, is like, not that I know ADB, not like I've been to his house. I've never met the guy, but just from hearing stories about him from, Graham McNeil and even Guy Haley. And because I even talked to Graham Neal personally, because he and I are like this, you guys, totally like this. No, but I had talked to him personally, and he had nothing but nice things to say about ADB and about his, dealings with ADB, and just like how, they were forthcoming and, just being willing to help with stuff. So with that, I just have a hard time believing that ADB would just kill off a character just because he felt slighted. It doesn't from, and also like everything else I've heard about the Black Library, because this would have been back when Laurie Golding was the editor, kind of like the editor in chief of this whole thing. They were like a tight family. Like they all were conferring with one another for literally every little thing. So anyway, not that I was part of this, not that I know ADB personally, not that, I've hung out, and even if I did know him, it's not like I was there, but I just have personally a hard time believing that he would be callous like that, because the authors have all seemed to get along for the most part. So that's all I got to say. But anyway, I have a feeling I've been frozen for Jen, and now she... Oh, this is a fun night for podcasting, you guys. This is what makes this all fun. So, what would really help is if I actually had the questions up and I could just be kind of moving this along, but I'm failing in my duties here. So I'm going to pull up the questions so I can kind of move things along. Where were we? Oh,
so I heard that this is a fun night for podcasting.
It is a fun night for podcasting. It's great.
Yes, absolutely. So our next...
So I just like...
Oh my God. You know what this thing that sucks about this?
What?
Do you know the part that really, really peeves me about this? And I want everyone to know this is the part that really peeves me, is that I'm the huge Night Lord fangirl. I really enjoyed this book. I have a lot to say about this book. And so, of course, my internet or computer is like, no, you don't. You're good. You're totally good. I'm like, oh, okay then. Sorry. Maybe, though, and I'm going to be really honest, my team did a team building event at a rage room, and there was like an old PC tower in there, and I went to town on that with a tire iron. So maybe my computer's like, so that's how it is.
I've seen what you do behind closed
Low-key.
doors.
Yeah, and if you keep acting like this, we'll be going to timeout. Anyways, so moving from Zosah Hall, because we have there's two main characters of the story, right? You have Zosah Hall, and then you have Maita Ashen. Do you like her as a character, and were you really invested in her story?
Yes, and
yes. Is she a good counterpart to Sahal?
Yes, and yes, and yes. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, I mean, I liked everything about her. I felt bad for her for most of this, and I kept comparing her master to like other Inquisitors that we've seen with their interrogators, like Eisenhorn, or even Ravener with his interrogator, or
Prowl.
Thank you, that guy. With their interrogators, and the interrogator is supposed to be an up and coming Inquisitor, and he treats her like she's just some thing that's there.
Well, and I feel like it's a cycle. Like they're like, oh, my Inquisitor treated me like shit. And look what a good Inquisitor I am. So now's your turn, child. There's this, and I think at some point, like with Crowl, I always felt like, and I think we talked about this in the podcast, he was very transactional. Very, what do you need? What can you do for me? If the answer is nothing to this, then I have no use for you right now. Like, I do feel that, I didn't feel that way. I mean, obviously, Kaustus had a few things going on, but which we'll talk about in a second here. He had some issues, but I thought that Maita Ashen, at first, she kind of irked me. Because I was like, oh, yay, you can't advocate for yourself at all, huh? And I have to remind myself, oh, no, this is this universe. This is this universe. These are people with ultimate power. And it's actually the scene where she attempts to call him, and she's like, whoa, I don't think what we think is going on down here with these murders. And he like totally just dresses her down. And that was when I was like, oh, right. You don't want to argue with these people. You don't want to, like, this is the world that you have been thrust into. And then she really, really grew on me, and I absolutely was rooting for her by the end, but also rooting for Zosah Hall.
Well, yeah, I mean, they both got away together. That's how I interpret the ending. Anyway, I do have to say, though, I was going to be really pissed off if Kaustus did have everything in hand and everything was perfect all along.
Yes. Agreed with that entirely. There was a point around the midway point where I was like, this better not be where this goes. And then
it was when she was being visited by the Adeptus, and or the adept, and
The
he was,
adept.
yeah, and he was, giving her that pop quiz, like pop quiz, asshole, and she failed the test, and he was explaining, he's like, no, because you have to have faith in your Inquisitor, and she's like, oh my God, I'm right. You're right, I shouldn't do this, and I was like, wait, hold on a second. If that's really what's going on, he does have everything well in hand, and she messed everything up, I'm really going to be disappointed in this book. And thankfully,
Right.
the answer was not that he was totally evil, and not that he had everything in hand. I like that it was something else, because I think either one of those would have been too simple
Right.
of explanations.
Yes. So I was right there with you, because one of the plot devices that it's not that I don't like it, but it does have to be done well and right, is I had everything in hand and now you messed it up because I didn't communicate with you. You have to do that kind of stuff well, right? But on the other hand, I was like, if this is yet another Inquisitor who's actually evil or is in league with Satan or something, right? Like it was going to feel trite. It would have been fine, but I would have been disappointed in it. And no, it was something a little else. And I have to be very honest, I did not see it coming
No, did not.
at all.
Nope.
Nope. And
No,
okay,
honestly,
so I have to say this.
because when the Eldar showed up, I was like, oh, one of these guys who has like fallen, because we see this all the time, especially with the Xenos, where they come like a little too close to what they're fighting against. And I was like, okay, here we go. But it wasn't that at all. So I was very happy.
So this is kind of wild theory time.
Yeah.
So, and I don't remember where I read this now. I don't know if this is like how old this was. I think I might have read this on Daka Daka, or it might have been on Reddit, or some other random forum. There was this theory that the Corona Nox had a soul stone in it, because they always talk about how it has that one diamond in it, right? And it's kind of different. And so there was this theory that maybe it was a soul stone. And reading this book with the Eldari and how, right? Reading this book, I was like, is this the book where that theory came from?
I mean, that might make some sense.
Then it dawned on me. I was like, oh my God, this is probably like a fan. And I don't know, maybe there is another story somewhere out there where they're like, this is what it is. But then it dawned on me that, this is probably conjecture from this book. And I'm just so late to the party, though I'm just now reading the source material.
Well, I mean, why else would the Eldar want it?
Like,
that also confused me.
You're-
It was like, because he talked about that they had, the Eldar tried to take it from them in the beginning. I was like, I don't understand. Like, why do the Eldar want this? This is not really their MO, to take Mon K devices.
Well, the Eldar have a thing for the Night Lords. There's a few stories out there where they have a thing for the Night Lords, and there's some bad blood there. And part of me low-key wonders, but then my dumbass was like, or my, hopeful self was like, maybe Conrad Kurtz's soul is in the Soul Stone and we can bring Conrad Kurtz back. Anybody else? Very excited for that.
I think
Maybe
that's
he's
just
not
you.
for real. He's dead. Shut up.
No, that's
Anyway,
just you.
maybe it has Sanguinius' soul in it. Now are we excited about it?
No.
To be fair, that would totally be his idiom. I was like, oh yeah, my brother's soul's in here. Anyways,
Actually,
yeah. So
you know what? Considering how the two of them parted, man, that would not surprise me in the least. God, that'd be crazy. I don't think I'd like it either.
no, I don't think I would either. We already have one Primarch with a soul in a jar. We don't need a soul stone. This is adjacent. So, but no, that was really funny with the crown. I was like, I just read the receipt. Really excited about that one, y'all. So alas, Porcaustus, or is he Porcaustus? Was his whole So with him and Mita, and then basically how we come to this reveal at the end, was it sad? Like, did you like it? Was it compelling? Did it work?
It did. It worked.
It worked really well. And I think I always knew that people really liked this book. But so going in, I was trying to manage my expectations, but I was like, all right, this is a pretty loved book. I mean, you can see that it's the reader's choice is why that they republished it, right? I see why now. I see why, for a lot of reasons. I see why, but I honestly think that might be part of it. It's just this nice little reveal.
I was worried it was going to be dated.
Oh yeah.
Kind of like when I read Dune for the first time last year. I was like, whoa.
That's a little rough around the edges.
That is dated, man. Or, excuse me, that was going to be too comic booky because he's a comic book writer.
Yes, or that it was just going to be kind of like, I'm a Night Lord, I'm really evil. Like he managed to do, and it's interesting, especially going back and reading it now, because now you really do see where ADB drew a lot of inspiration to, yes, this man is a monster. Yes, he is awful. But he's also compelling and he's interesting and he's a little multifaceted, and there's this weirdly human side to him. Like, I think you can see where ADB took a lot of inspiration from this in the best of ways possible. And just kind of continued it spiritually for the Night Lords. And I really do, I like that. And with Kaustus, like, I like when Mita is talking to him and she's like, how long has it been like this? And he's like, oh man. Like, Kaustus, you get to see a more human side of, because he's just this asshole.
Right.
So, like, the entire book, he's just a dick. And I'm not saying that he like, oh, look, I'm actually a very kindly old man. No, he doesn't have that reveal either.
But, I mean, like, he's beyond awful. He drugs her. And then when she wakes up, they're all making fun of her for it. She's like, I was drugged. And like, sure you were, Jan.
Sure, Jan. Oh, yeah, he's awful. But once you realize what's going on with him, with the Eldar,
makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And then what's kind of fun is, because remember he says to her, he's like, well, like sometimes I kind of was driving and I was kind of in control, but then other times I wasn't. And like going back through the book and unpicking, like, where were you in the driver's seat?
I think honestly he was in the driver's seat when she killed that member of his retinue. And she made the comment, he was like listing all the things that guy has done. And she was like, apparently he's never encountered a witch on a bad day. And he kind of smirks and was like, true. That might have been one. I think another one was when she sees him with the orc tusks, which, like, seriously, dude, that's just weird. And
this is weird. How, like, I do love, because she describes that. And I was like, but how does he eat? So the fact that she asked that,
right,
I was like, thank you.
But I mean, just
she's my homegirl.
Like, I think I think that's why he wears the mirror mask, because other Inquisitors would be like, "What is wrong with you? You don't do that. Like, we study the Xenos. We don't wear their but anyway."
Dude, Inquisitors are weird.
But when she
I feel like some would just be like,
but like when she asks, that, and he kind of laughs, I think that's another moment. He was in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think going back to what we had said earlier, I don't think he's like, I like that, oh, the Eldari were controlling me all along. It wasn't like oh, forgive me for everything that happened. Like now you can basically go back and be like, ah, shucks. He does, again, there's this nice balancing act between, okay, you can feel sorry for this guy. You can have some empathy for him. You can realize that something bad happened to him, but he's still a dick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, still not a good person. I mean, he's an Inquisitor, for God's sake. I think that
also he should have known better. Oh my God! It just hit me. That's why his mind was so closed. Because if he's possessed by Eldar, they would be powerful enough to close his mind like that. And so I think the moments when she could feel his mind, that's obviously when he was he was in control. Because there were
That is a really good point.
Because there were a few times where she was able to feel his mind.
Yes, there was. Oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. Those are probably the times when he's like fully present. And again,
and he said those were the times he was trying to leave clues, like to do these things to maybe kill him eventually, because he knew that was the only way he was going to be free.
Right. Which has to be awful, especially as an Ordo Xenos Inquisitor, when you're like, I know how this ends. Like,
right.
Great. And he also seemed to be somewhat cognizant of it, which that's also
if she didn't kill him, the Eldar would have. Let's be 100%. Real. They would have gotten a little toy and left and killed him and, maybe destroyed the whole planet for funsies and left.
Yeah, for the lols.
Well, but they didn't destroy the Night Lords. Surely did.
Oh my God. So I totally forgot to ask anything about Acerbus. Not to be mistaken with Erebus. I think because of that, I keep really, really enjoying the emphasis on the ass syllable. Because, it's kind of a dick. And I don't know why I find it so offensive that he's so in league with chaos as a Night Lord. It's like, ew, sir, that is not what your legion's about, sir.
Well, it also kind of shows, again, the different dichotomies. But then these legions, how they're not even legions. It's funny because they try to be a legion, but they're not legions. They're disparate war bands who still wear, midnight clad. It's the same across all of them. The only exception is, I would say, is the Black Legion, who is, yes, they're from the Sons of Horus, but anybody can join. So it's not exactly a legion.
That brotherhood, if you want to be part of a cohesive group of people, come on over. The second closest in their own weird way is probably the Death Guard.
I would, yes. Although, though, because Chris Raitt pointed out with Lords of Silence, they have their own little war bands, and that they're not, and their new recruits don't understand, the old guard, why they're doing what they're doing. Why do you follow Mortarion? He's boring and doesn't do anything.
He's kind of lame.
Yeah, whereas, the old guard is like, you weren't there when he saved all of us.
Exactly. You weren't of Barbarous, so you don't understand this. But they're probably
said Barbarous because I was like, I knew it started with the B, but I was like, it's not Barabbas.
It's not Barbie Land.
It's like, it's not it's not Barabbas. That's from the Bible. It's not Barnabas. What is it?
Barnacles.
Well, I mean, sure.
It's kind of within their idiom, right? It's like Benadryl Cabbage Patch.
See, now I'm all going to think of as the Death Guard. It's that they kind of look like Davy Jones men from the second Pirates movie.
A pox on you for mentioning those movies. But I totally forgot to ask anything about him. I thought
because he was there and then he was gone. I was like, I don't care.
Pretty much. And so here's the reason I really mention him is that the heck did I set my book? He's mentioned on the back. He makes it to the back that he has to he's plotting to destroy his treacherous rival Acerbus and once again rule over his dark army. Not a lot of screen time.
Yeah, because even if he had the crown on his head, I don't think that the Night Lords would have sided with him anyway.
No.
Not that band, because that band had totally gone into chaos. And even when they arrived, and he was disgusted by it.
Oh yeah.
This is not what we were supposed to do.
Same. Sahal. Same. But just disappointed. I wasn't mad. I was just disappointed. You bought into their bullshit. But there is, and I think that's the big tragedy of both of these men chasing after this trinket that, again, I honestly do believe, I believe that, and there is that, I think it's it's either in Soul Hunter or Blood Reaver, where he's talking with the Dreadnought. And the Dreadnought's like, do you think you're the only person he can fight it in? Really?
Right.
These two men, like, and you basically almost destroyed an entire planet
Yeah.
for a crown. And I
Well,
mean, the Eldari helped. The Eldari helped.
To be fair, I think that Sahal, he would have taken the crown and left. My like, I have no use for this place. I'm out of here.
Peace.
Whereas Asterbus was just like, sweet, let's destroy things. Cause
Right, for the lulls. So, and you know why? Because he didn't have human companions. The Night Lords, and this is again going back to something I kind of touched on with the whole terror thing and touching on this thing with Chiani and Mita. The Night Lords, ironically, are most interesting when they have some sort of human bond, good or bad, right? Did you like Chiani and her group? Did she... The reveal with the polymorph, I was like, oh, that's mean. That's mean. Anyways, did you
that
find her
made me
compelling?
sad, and I did not see that coming.
I didn't see that coming either. And I was like, oh, you killed the Night Lord's friend. That's
And
not
honestly,
gonna
like
go
at that
well.
point, and even when Mita's just like, oh, and then my thoughts were, oh my God, do not tell me the son of a bitch did have everything in hand.
Yes. Don't reveal that. But I found her. What's hard is that, I mean, when she kind of know roughly when she gets replaced, but like,
You don't
liked
know
her.
definitely.
Yeah, you don't know
Yeah.
definitely. And I liked her. I was rooting for her. It's always interesting to me that even the Chaos Space Marines, they still need, now they rationalize it as, oh, we need slaves and serfs and people to do all of our grunt work for us. And she was definitely serving a very real purpose for him, right? All of the gangs were serving a very real purpose for him, but they had use.
Right.
But he did seem like oh, she's not, oh, she's dead. Like, he seemed to have actual affection's not the right word, because these are definitely not men who feel that, but he had like some sort of like connection,
Right.
right? This one is useful. This one I actually kind of like the same way that we probably feel about like our dogs and our cats. Like, oh, well, I like that one.
Yeah. I could see
Not like
that.
actual companionship. But why does it go? And I think for me, it goes back to that whole, there is definitely a human side to them. And I think maybe a little bit more than others. I don't know why, but it always makes them more interesting. I actually find in general with the Chaos Space Marines, I find their human companions or their human non-Space Marine companion, friend, whatever you want to call them, people, I always find them a little bit more compelling. It might just be me. Does it mean that he has a heart? Like the Grinch, did it grow 3 sizes only to then shrink right back down?
It might have. And it
And he
did
was
shrink
like,
right back down.
Trust. Yeah, he's like, trust no soul.
I mean, like, because he's like, this is why I need nobody. This is why I trust nobody. I'm like, well, I mean, kind of makes sense. Yeah, I get it. And yet, he trusted Mita enough to kind of open up stuff to her. And then he's taken her with him. His little adventures.
What happens next for her?
I don't know, but I really liked the Inquisitor's missive back. He was just like, I don't think we're ever going to know what's going to happen here, but this place sucks now. Just,
That was good. And I do always I actually really love when the authors put some type of missive like in that, because it always feels super 40K, right? And you could absolutely see them just being like, wow. It reminded me, well, I guess actually, again, probably a callback to this book. It reminded me of Red Tithe, where at the end they're like, "Ooh, yeah, this shit was bonkers here. Let's go ahead and delete it from the record," thus being the callback to the beginning of the book where they were like, "There's no records here," and it's really kind of curious. So, congratulations. You've just created another mystery for another Inquisitor someday.
And it's and the cycle continues.
And the cycle continues. I don't know if Robbie McNiven intended, like, if maybe he read this book and he was like, oh, this is my source material. But it reminded me of that.
Right.
And I do love a good inquisitorial missive.
Well, we saw some of that also with, Amberly Vale, like with some of the Caiaphas Cain books, when she'd write her letters that were obviously like nice and propagandized and everything. And would kind of be like, well, we just may never know like how this ended or what this real goal was. And okay. I always kind of wonder that with some of the Inquisitors stuff, like, because this
Right.
one, I could tell this guy was just like, I don't know. And I found pieces of Caustus, so I'm going to say that he's dead and his whole retinue, and looks like the Night Lords had fun with this place. But, yeah, so other than that, like, your guess is as good as mine, and we're never going to know about that. So that's cool. The end.
Cool. Cool. Okay, so given that, right, given that piece of it, given the Night Lords trilogy, which you haven't gotten to the end of that yet, but just bear with me for a second here, and then Red Tithe, these are like the 3 books that we've read that really do deal with the Night Lords. Now, the Red Tithe deals with the Carcharodons more so than the Night Lords, but the Night Lords are the main antagonists of that book, right? And we got to see a lot of, are the Carcharodons Night Lords? I don't know. A little bit of that. So, meta commentary. Of all those 3 series, which of them would you like to see more of? Like, which story, plot thread, line, idea do you want to see more of? Or is the answer just all of the above?
Carcharodons, man. I would love Robbie McNiven to pick some of that stuff back up. Or even Eldwater Albert. I mean, I like that his Carcharodons book. I mean, I'm more interested in the Carcharodons and the Night Lords, and that's just me. And it's mainly because I would love more delving into where they came from.
It was so vague,
Right.
in Eduardo Alberts, and I thought he handled that so nicely. This idea that a Space Marine, we don't know which one. I liked that. That whole concept, right? I agree with you. The Carcharodons, I just want more of in general. I don't know that I cared about the Night Lords banned from Red Tithe. Like you, which is hard, like a really rough thing for me to say. Like you, I'm fascinated by the Carcharodons, and I want to see more of them. And I think Robbie McNiven and Eduardo Albert really did a good job with them. Especially given some of the stuff that happened in the Silent Hunters. I couldn't think of the name of that book for a second. I'd like to see more of that. Obviously, this is probably going to shock people. I want to see more of this. I want to know what happens to Maita. I want to know what happens to Zosah Hall. Like, I would legitimately love to see her like become his new friend. And she helps him with her psychic powers try to take over the Night Lords. With the Chrononoxinator. I would love that actually a little bit more than the Night Lords trilogy. Like, I really want more Night Lords trilogy, but once we get to the end of the 3rd book, I think it'll be a little clearer why I have very mixed feelings about more Night Lords books. Allegedly, I found like a snippet of an interview where ADB had said like he wants to write more Emperor's Spears, he wants to write more Black Legion, he wants to write more Night Lords, but he was waiting for the Siege of Terra to finish, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I think he like just had a baby, I think, during the pandemic. So maybe his life's a little busy right now. I don't know. Again, I don't know him personally, but I would actually like to see another book with these characters, which is a real bummer that Simon Spurrier doesn't write for the Black Library anymore.
Yeah, maybe his comic book stuff, kind of took over. I mean, but to be fair, there's a lot of writers from this time. From the, because this is what, 2005, there's a lot of writers from this time who don't write for the Black Library anymore for one reason or another. It doesn't have to be some big falling out. It's just.
Right. There's actually a lot of, I think actually, you don't even have to caveat that with from this period. there's a lot of writers in general who like write a book or 2 books or maybe even 3, and then they've Rachel Harrison much. Does she still write from the Black Library? For the Black Library, like we haven't seen a book from her in how long now?
Right.
That's one. You and I were just talking. I'm looking back at all of my books because you and I had just. It's not Josh Reynolds, but there was somebody else that we were like, oh, we haven't seen a book from this person in a hot minute. There's a lot of them. I think maybe they start writing it. Maybe it's just not the right fit. I don't know. He needs to come back and write another book. Maybe we could respond to his tweet and let him know that he needs to come back and write another
Anthony
book.
Reynolds. That's one.
Oh yeah, there's one.
Yeah, because the way that Karn ended, there could most likely definitely be more to that. So
Right.
I don't know who else though that we were talking about that hasn't written anything in a while. Maybe Guy Haley hasn't written something in a while. I mean, he hasn't, but I mean, I wouldn't say that we're starved of his books. We have a lot.
And to be clear, it's me. So when I'm like, we were just talking about this, just could be like a month ago. It could be 3 years ago. I don't know.
Sure. Okay.
We were just having this conversation. Don't you remember like 3 years ago when we were on the beach in Georgia? We were talking about this. Just happened. I do say that maybe, so the Night Lords are obviously the Night Lords. Our next book is going to be more Chaos Space Marines, but going to be a decidedly different variety. We already kind of teased it at the beginning of this podcast. We are finally getting to Renegades, Lord of Excess by Rich McCormick.
Which I think he's a new author.
I think he is. Yes. It's actually been kind of exciting. We've read from a few new authors as of late. And I guess technically Simon Spurrier is new to us. Emperor's Children, y'all. Lord of Excess. Kind of goes with the title. But this is a continuation of the Renegades series. We read Harrow Master, however you want to say it, recently. I guess this is the latest like series that they're going to write like 4 or 5 books and then promptly abandon. Sorry, what?
Right. Yeah, I know. That's not like them to do at all.
Not like them to do at all. Space Marine battle books, Heroes of the Space Marines. Yeah. Anyways, I'm excited for it. I think sometimes I like the idea of this book because it sounds like it's going to be more about like one warlord and less of like a larger over like arcing fabulous bill type of thing. Sometimes, much like Lord of Night, spiritually they seem very similar because much like Lord of Night, sometimes it's just kind of fun to see one guy doing some stuff.
Yeah, agreed. I think it'd be interesting. I'm a little nervous because it's Emperor's Children. And they kind of creep me out. But maybe it'll be fun. And honestly, I think a lot to do is the fact that
we will be sure to count the perfections.
That the Fabulous Bill books, I think, kind of soured me on a lot of Emperor's Children stuff. I think but I think it's also because I got tired of Bile's shtick. But
I agree with that entirely. And I think on some, like, we didn't hate the Fabulous Bill books, but I do think that they've left a mark.
Yep.
There's some baggage there.
Which could be that we just don't like
club.
the Emperor's Children, or that we read them all back to back to back to back to back. And that by the time we got to the 3rd book, we're like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, but this book just came out, so we have to. Anyway.
I think there could be something to that. I think it's also why we have a book club podcast. So it can be part, let's talk about books because we like to fangirl, and part therapy from the scars that we pick up from reading about the Emperor's Children.
That's true.
And our disappointment at not getting a sequel to Lords of Silence.
Yeah, Chris Wright, what are you doing?
What do you even do with your time? I'm kidding. I love everything else. Do you want to take us out, Carrie, before we have more technical glitches?
Right, I mean... It's a fun night, you guys. It's so much fun. So you've listened painfully to the Warhammer 40k book club episode regarding The Lord of Night by Simon Spurrier. Be sure to join us next time as we delve into Renegades, Lord of Excess, Shiny by Rich McCormick. So We're an unofficial book club, and I just knocked over half my Funko Pops. That's great. We are an unofficial book club and not affiliated with the Black Library or any of its affiliates. You can find both the vidcast and the podcast on our website, WH40kbookclub.com. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, give a review, and all those wonderful things to the vidcast on YouTube or the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Come join our Discord. We're having fun discussions, and people share what they're painting. I don't, because I suck at it, or I just don't paint. But regardless, we have some pretty fun discussions. And I have to say right now, if you guys want to know how we feel about the announcement about the Custodes, I'm going to direct you to Jen Bosier's article that she wrote about female Space Marines. I will provide a link in the description here below, but that's where I'm going to direct you, and that is all we are going to say about it here. So, is that our site has articles like the one I just mentioned about our adventures in reading other Warhammer 40k books and short stories outside the book club books. In case you hadn't noticed, I finally finished Burden of Loyalty. The Horse Heresy is finally behind me. My God, that was painful. And so now I'm on to the next one. I only have like 9 books left to go. I know I can do this, but regardless, either way, please stay a while and read from a crack. Yeah, I don't have my Alfarius thing, but so I will just kind of hold up my mug here. It says, everything you have been told is a lie, because that is kind of the Inquisition's MO.